Joining us now, Associate Professor of Political Science at Fordham University and co-host of the FAQ NYC podcast, Christina Greer. CEO of Bridge USA, a youth-led movement on college campuses aimed at reducing political polarization, Manu Meal. Semaphore political reporter Dave Weigel and host of Puck's The Powers That Be podcast and Snapchat's Good Luck America, Peter Hamby. Dave, let's get the big picture here. We saw a lot of success for the Democratic Party, but a lot of different kinds of candidates. What is the takeaway?
You said it with affordability. This was a theme all year. This was something that every Democrat tried to bring whatever question they got back to. And on this network, I saw Ari Melber interview Mamdani and challenge him to bring the most obscure topics he could back to affordability. But I saw Abigail Spanberger do that. I saw Michael Sherrill do that. And they did it early. They didn't scramble at the last minute. Michael Sherrill over the summer was talking about freezing electric rates. Spanberger was talking about housing. She was talking about the threat of data centers to electricity costs. And Republicans didn't really come up with a good response in those races. In New Jersey, for example, Jack Ciattarelli's day one agenda was ending sanctuary city status and pulling out of a greenhouse gas initiative, and that was it. So by not being the candidates who had to answer for what Trump was doing and not having to answer for someone in the White House like they did when Joe Biden was president, they all ran on different versions of affordability, very, very different costs in these places. So there's a lot of harmony among Democrats today. Part of that is winning is fun, and they haven't done it in a while, but a lot of harmony that, oh, yes, we do have different strategies, different messages, and we can stay away from the Trump news cycle of the day if we pivot back to saying things cost too much and it's his fault.
Yeah, what's interesting about what happened last night was, although Zoran Mamdani is kind of the outlier here as a Democratic socialist, although he might make some part in the party feel uncomfortable, and Republicans will certainly want to run against the socialist idea, claim he's a communist, he still is within the bounds of the Democratic Party and the Democratic base and the structures that they've come to be comfortable with over the past decade. He believes in the things the Democratic Party believes in. He believes in equality. He believes in, affordability, as we've been talking about. But he's not saying things that would make the larger Democratic Party nervous. Graham Plattner is making the larger Democratic Party nervous because of past statements he made on Reddit, because of a tattoo that was a Nazi symbol that he has since covered up. You have Jared Golden, also in Maine, who's talking about how the shutdown's a bad idea and going after Democrats, making the Democratic Party uncomfortable. He's getting a progressive challenger in his seat. And then you also have Rob Sand, a Democrat in Iowa, who sounds a lot like a Republican some of the time. He, quotes the Bible, owns 2 6-hour handguns, goes deer hunting, asks the audience to sing America the Beautiful when he does campaign events. These are people, Dave, that in one time in the Democratic Party, they would have been totally cool with them. But now there is a question of whether they can fit in. Can the Democratic Party expand its base if they want to focus on affordability to pick the right candidate in the right place, even if that candidate doesn't meet the litmus test, the purity test?
In a lot of ways, they can. There also is less hostility by progressive Democrats to people who inside the tent than there was 4 or 8 years ago. I think of in Virginia, Ralph Northam got unendorsed by at least one progressive group, the former governor, because he said he didn't support sanctuary cities. And you saw with the Jay Jones controversy in Virginia, no Democrat, no group said this man is out of our party, out of our tent. In New York, with Mamdani's race, he moved to the center over his political career, very short political career, but he wrote tweets in 2020 about defunding the police and other issues that he recanted. He kept DSA and socialists in his corner. You didn't see anyone bolting and saying he's selling us out. And he won over more Democrats who said they were convinced, okay, he's young, he's fresh, he said some things I disagree with, but who doesn't? So there a lot of harmony, actually, for all the focus on Democratic infighting. The main situation you're talking about with Jared Golden getting a primary challenger, yes, there are some progressive challenges ramping up to more centrist Democrats. That is important, but I'm interested to see, before those races get underway, how these candidates moderate, because Mamdani moderating before voters started really paying attention to him was essential to his win. If he was still talking and tweeting like he did in 2020, I don't think he would have won the primary.
That's interesting. Christina?
I agree. I do think that all politics is local. I feel like we're sort of comparing apples and steak. You know, we have two governors who ran statewide, and we
Yeah.
know that, all states are basically red states, and you have big blue cities in said states that can flip them in presidential years. And obviously, this version of affordability does work. But we're talking about New York City, where I don't want to be a New York City exceptionalist, but we do have some unique mechanisms here. So can we take lessons from Mamdani? I think we should. Some of the lessons we should take are consultants told his challengers what they should say. He asked the voters what the issues were. Consultants said it was public safety like it was in 2021. That's clearly not what Americans are feeling. I do think that Democrats, by and large, what it seems like Democratic voters want, they want Democrats to act like Democrats and not weak
Well,
Republicans.
they want them to be authentic. So I wonder,
Right.
is this the Democratic Party finally learning a lesson or two after 10 years, or at least after this past election where they really missed the mark in 2024, the past presidential election?
Well, I would say a couple of things. I mean, as you know, Katie, I lead a national organization called Bridge USA, and we're nonpartisan. We work with young people from across the country from different sides of the political spectrum. And the idea is, how do you actually empower people to have dialogue? Now, how does that fit into this context? Young people, I think, today are waking up excited because a lot of us want change, left and right. The question is, what prevents us from waking up in 1 year and thinking, oh my God, the losses are reversed? What prevents us from being in a cycle of constant and cyclical polarization where someone like Mamdani or a lot of people on the right that are change agents have difficulty actually getting change through? And so one of the things that I'm curious about is how leaders like Mamdani are actually thinking about bringing the country together, not for some kumbaya purpose, but actually to build coalitions of change. Because I think people actually need to be convinced that change is possible. I'm glad that some people feel great yesterday night. The question is, how do you sustain that change?
Yeah.